secretary? Can she be?
Is
Darren.
Rebecca, are you gonna be our secretary?
Apparently.
I nominate Rebecca as secretary.
Under duress.
Well, she's not a member of the.
No, she's not a member.
It's like the budget committee. She's not a member of the
Okay.
board, so
We
she's not
will
necessarily.
leave the secretary. Who's supposed to come on soon?
Julie, if she's going to.
I nominate Julie to be secretary.
Did you hear something back?
Somebody second the motion?
I second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. We've got our office, I guess that means I'm stuck with it. We are here for a public hearing on a variance request from Brian and Jenny Butler. 117 Hoff, how do you pronounce that?
Hoffses.
Hoffses Beach Lane. Is that where you live?
Yes.
And like, you have the checklist that you want me to go through.
Well, behind the agenda, tried to put
Be
something
able to live
short together just to keep
Good job.
focus there on towards the end of things. We need to get into the meeting here. I imagine they'll just want to go through the application here from the applicant. Ask any clarifying questions of the original, potentially just to get a better sense. In the original application, there was a little bit more information separate than what was provided in the variance request. So just a reminder of kind of the scope and duties of the board. As it was written in the ordinance, highlighted the variance component. So just the second page behind the agenda.
Here, authorize the here requests and authorized variances provided in the Title 3A, Section 4353. And the board may receive evidence and make findings of fact as provided by statute. And then it says the appellate review of the board only reviews the record of the initial hearing to determine if the decision was legally sound. And these, that's what I talked about the original hearing.
Make sure everyone's on the same page here.
No,
Bruce,
he
for a
wasn't.
second.
I'm just looking at the.
None back that.
We have the complete record that's been provided for us.
Right.
And it shows that the map is M017 block L013. So, and it's within the shoreline zone. And then we have the supporting information for variance. And they're asking for an undue hardship variance. And, it's operated as a residential and seasonal cottage. And we have the checklist, plans of the property, additional information. And are you also asking for a disability variance? So no,
It would probably equate to that, yes.
right. But it suggests in the language of the ordinance that you granting a variance will not, the property is not located in whole or in part within a shoreline area. And you are in a shoreline area, right?
Yes.
So I guess the question is whether legally speaking, we can grant a variance despite that. And do you want to sort of summarize your
Yeah.
application for us?
Ultimately, it's a fairly simple thing, and it's. I've never been to an appeals board meeting before, much less a code
Sure.
related bill meeting before, so this is always interesting to me. We own the place up at 117 Hoffses Beach. And it has two decks that are built on the house. And the house is like from 1972, it's a year-round structure. The two decks are falling apart. They're basically needing to be replaced. The interesting thing is that because the decks were built at different times by my wife's family, they don't match up in height. They're separated by a concrete patio that probably predates the decks themselves. It's kind of an interesting situation. What we want to do is had it so that the two decks are essentially one continuous structure that is at the same elevation, right? And it would replace the concrete patio. And we also wanted to extend one of the decks parallel, not closer to the shoreline, but parallel to the shoreline by 4 feet, so that we could then have handicapped accessible or stairless access to that deck. There are a lot of different reasons for that, but ultimately, the deck itself, in terms of it provides the only access to the living floor of the house. And the only way that you can get into the house is going upstairs. But we have elderly relatives and people that can't visit or go into the house because they can't go upstairs.
Is it the case that,
So I did some pictures and I can give you some more information.
no, well, I was guessing, wondering whether people. I mean, don't people enter it from, without going on the deck, by going downstairs?
No. They ultimately, the way that you go into the house is like going upstairs. And interestingly, the way that the primary entrance to the house was built, it's considered to be an unsafe entry because you would open the door and there's no real space before all of a sudden you're going down the stairs. So from an emergency standpoint, it doesn't really pass code. But anyways, so these two decks, what we applied to the code enforcement officer for was to replace the decks. And we've been having conversations on and off with him for the past year about this. We, in February, submitted to him an application and the design, because he wanted to see he wanted an existing condition drawing and what we wanted to change it to drawing. And we submitted that to him in February. As you know, he's fairly new to this particular code enforcement job in Damascata. It then turned into an exercise where he was looking at the shoreline zoning ordinance and I was looking at the shoreline zoning ordinance to see what was actually in it for actual rules. And ultimately, our focus was on the fact that you're looking at square footage and you're not allowed to build closer to the water. He was looking at it in a different bent where anything within 25 feet of the water couldn't be changed at all, just replaced in kind. And that you couldn't change the height or elevation of any structure. It also then turned into whether or not a patio is a structure, which then ends up that he agreed ultimately that yes, because they do call out concrete patios in the ordinance, that a concrete patio is an impervious structure and it counts as part of your square footage for everything. So as you know, it gets very complicated in terms of how the ordinance is written. And ultimately, the way that the state settled on things is square footage looking down on your property. There are some height restrictions for things like building a higher structure, like a roof and things like that, that in this case don't apply. So ultimately, what we wanted to do was, again, replace concrete patio, which is an impervious surface, with just take it out and replace it with gravel, but basically have that deck extended on both ends so that it is not only makes a continuous structure, which is just great for access. You don't have to go in the house to go out of the house to go to something that's 5 feet away, right? And we wanted to make it the same height, and he was ultimately saying that we couldn't even make the decks the same height, even if we were replacing this one, and they never even touched. So there was a disagreement on our interpretation of the shoreline ordinance and the spirit of what it contains. It says that generally, in general, some structures can't be changed, but that general is not never. Because of the fact that we're only going to be doing this once in my lifetime, I'm not planning to build a new deck ever again. The idea was that we needed to appeal because of the fact that we wanted to make this so that there was a stairless access. We wanted to make sure that the decks were safe in terms of being able to egress out of the building in an emergency. And we wanted to go ahead and do something that we felt that was better structurally and aesthetically for the use of the facility. And so ultimately, that's why we're here. We did the math, and ultimately, you know, again, in terms of talking about things, we're talking about a difference that's actually 3 inches in height. And we're also only talking about 14 square feet of essentially added impact in terms of being covered with the square footage ordinance. In terms of that, the lakeside deck. The other deck, as a structure by itself, the code enforcement officer apparently had no issue with. We were talking about it's 7 feet wide, we wanted to expand it to 12 feet wide, so it could fit like, you know, outdoor furniture and things like you would expect on a deck today. So that's really the gist of it. We're looking for essentially a variance so that we can increase the height of the deck by 6 inches and have it so that it extends on one end over what is currently a surface that is impervious, part of the structure. And we wanted to go ahead and really just extend it 4 feet to the south so that we could have a stairless access off the backside.
So I really have pictures of everything, and I have a little bit that I can tell about details so you can see what.
Okay, I'd like to clarify one thing.
Okay.
before we do it. When I was looking at online, I believe you had the 25-foot mark written on there. And it's not on this one, so could you, is it the house that's rated at 25 feet?
That, I don't know, that was the code officer, that it started with that, so the application that was.
Yes, he said he measured it in the 25-foot mark, went through the middle of the lakeside there.
That one there.
In the middle of the lakeside there.
Yeah, it's in the package, I think that's the.
Yeah, so he
Okay.
considered that the lakeside structures, the 25-foot line would bisect right through them so that
Yeah.
they would be within the 25-foot zone. The other deck is outside of that 25-foot zone.
So everything you're doing on this. So where you want to extend and add to the larger deck. Is totally without side, totally within that.
This is
Yes.
in the shoreline.
Yeah.
Most of the water, this is outdated, and I guess they're gonna pick out the concrete there and put it connect the south.
But that shows that he's going to there, but this shows he's coming all the way over here.
I think the pictures that I have will really help you see
Okay.
what stuff looks like. And I have, yeah, there's a couple there. But if I can read through a couple of things just to give you a little context of where we are, I'd appreciate it. And of course, most importantly, thank you for letting us come here today. We purchased this place just about 5 years ago from my cousins, and it had been owned by their parents. So we helped my cousins settle their estate. It is next to what had been my grandparents' camp that they purchased in the mid-60s. It was the second camp that my grandparents, Harvey and Jenny Gamage, bought back in 1962. And so I've been going out there my whole life, pretty much. So the camp that had been my grandparents' second camp is still in the family, and we are great friends with the people who have that. We started Gamage's Getaway, which is the name of the LLC, which is on the tax maps, because we hadn't planned on buying a second house, and we have to help pay for some of the expenses. And we only really rent to family and friends. That's really it. So if you look at picture 1, that is the picture of the entrances to the homes, to the home. So there's one for the basement and one for the first level, first floor. What my cousins had done, or my aunt and uncle had done, was from the basement, they'd had a kind of a very interesting chair for my uncle to use so he could get up to the first floor. But that was all taken out.
Looks like a chair elevator,
Pardon?
like an elevator.
Yeah, the stairway.
Yeah, stairless.
So you would enter into the basement down by the
And-
furnace and take a chair.
Yes.
That's been removed.
Yes, it was. So My mom's 91. She's not been able to come out to visit us because she's been in assisted living for the last almost 6 years. She'd lived with us for the previous 20 after she'd sold the house that I grew up in Bath. And we'd love to have her come. So if looking at the photo one, she can't, there's no way. So photo two gives you a picture of what the left-hand side or south side of the deck that's faces the lake looks like. And I put my car there specifically so you could see that it was very much the same elevation. So if you look behind the propane tanks, that's my car. And it's very much or very close to the same height as that front-facing deck. So if we were able to come up with something that we could get her up to, she could actually visit. And I really hope that that is possible. The second group, photo 3 and 4, the porch out front, that's a bench. There's no railing at all. And that is certainly not up to code. And looking at the steps that go up to that, and from the point of view, we go from that deck down to our dock. The concrete sort of ish steps are all different heights. 9 inches, 5 inches, 9 inches, 7.5 inches, 7 inches, and 8 inches. And I have additional photos if you want to see that. We want to make steps that are up to code with railings on the side that are up to code, and that the front part of that deck to have a railing that is up to code. The next part is if you look at photo 5, you can see where the door to the first floor opens and the stairs are immediately right there. That's not convenient to start with, but it's also, if it were in terms of getting help if somebody needed it, not very nicely accessible. So that's kind of why about extending that side a little bit more. So also we'd said that we'd love to be able to have someone who is mobilely challenged go from one porch to the other porch without having to go inside and around. By making those two parts connected, we would be replacing, so the square footage really wouldn't be that different from the concrete patio that's there. And you can see that from photo 6. We became grandparents last month for the very first time. And we want our porch and deck and all of that to be safe for the little one. No, she won't be crawling real soon, but she will be in the near future. And we certainly, our plan is to pass this house on to our sons and their families. And again, we just want things to be safe and accessible. Thanks again for letting us come and share more information. Have some questions for us?
I don't have any problems with you making the deck so that it's safe and safe railings and stuff like that. I question the connection of the two decks.
I guess one of the,
I don't see how that entryway
No, I don't know.
with the pad onto that deck is gonna be that much different than going up the other set of stairs.
Well, so by coming out from the front,
Yeah.
people can go all, to either location without having to go back in through the house.
Right.
And so like my mom, who generally gets by on a wheelchair or can take a couple of steps with a walker, and that's about, it would certainly be a whole lot easier not having to go, if she could come to the front of the house through a ramp and onto the front porch or deck. to go from that part to where the table where we would have a meal be by the connecting deck part instead of going back into the house and back up. It's extra steps and just would be more difficult.
I guess one of the questions has not what is desirable optimally, or what you would like to do if there were no regulations, but whether what you're asking us to do is consistent with the ordinance. And the code enforcement officer, what was his major concern? And with that,
He's got his letter that he's sent to them in there. I think the crux of it is, and it was noted on the drawings there, that the setback from the water line, as the code officer identified it. And the question is, did you confirm or are you in agreement with the distances he had identified from the high water line?
I'm gonna, cause I know that, on our security cameras, it showed when he showed up to measure it.
Yeah.
So, and he took a picture of his tape, which was interesting. But, one of our issues right now with, Pemaquid is, and we got this place around the time that the new fishway was completed. And the lake is now so much higher than it was 3 years ago that it's crazy. And so where we used to, when we first got there, we used to have a beach, it's now underwater. So, what is, that issue, again, the ordinance basically doesn't say you can't do things. It says you generally can't do things because, ultimately you need to be able to justify any sort of change. So, what we're looking at is the relief basically for those essentially those three functions. One, and again, the code enforcement officer said that he just didn't feel it was within his sole authority to deal with these three issues, so he felt that it needed to come to the appeals board. The first one is we wanted to increase the height so that they're at the same height. We're talking 3 inches. He says it has to be at exactly the same height because that's his interpretation.
but you're not,
He feels that someone would need to he doesn't feel it's within his direct authority to say we can increase them 3 inches. The second one is the handicapped access to the south. He feels it's reasonable, but again, he doesn't feel it's within his sole authority without it going to the appeal. And in terms of the issue of the concrete patio being taken out and replaced with a deck section that fits over that same exact square footage, he doesn't feel that he has the sole authority to make that determination. So he felt that it needed to come here so that that the committee would make those decisions rather than himself. One of the things that we also put in here that's not specifically obvious is that, we're talking about on the lakeside deck, making it 6 feet further away from, not 6 feet, 6 inches further away from the lake, which reduces the square footage of that particular thing. And that's where we only get 14 square feet of added impact on the side because we're taking back a number of square feet by making the deck 6 inches narrower.
right, but you're not contesting the findings of fact in the,
What we are contesting is the interpretation of the ordinance. Where he feels he doesn't have the authority to he believes the things that we're asking for are reasonable, but he doesn't believe he has the authority.
I guess one of the questions,
So we didn't know that the planning board, and stuff to make it. I mean, it's got to be a hardship and you've got to prove the hardship.
Yeah, and our hardship ultimately is principally that the issue of access,
Well,
handicapped access.
I looked at the Facebook page of your,
Mhm.
and it mentioned that it's certain weeks are already rented.
Correct.
So you're obviously able to make rental income in its current status.
Yes.
If-
We don't rent it a lot and it's only to people that we know.
That's, I mean, it's, yeah, but.
But
I guess-
we do have a bunch of time that we reserve for ourselves. And we have not been able to have my mother come because she can't get in the building.
I would think if there was a hardship, it was being able to, for handicap, to be able to get into the building. that could be a hardship.
Yeah, and that's, and that she is.
But can it be done, it could be done without the connection of the two decks? That's my question.
We still need to, then, we still need to have the variance on the south end.
I guess that's it. We can't, rework your building plans. The question is whether the code enforcement officer's finding is an error. And it's a matter of law. And I'm looking at the conditions for granting the variance. We must meet each of the following. And it might be useful to go through them one by one. The land, number one is the land in question cannot be a reasonable return unless the variance is granted. An opinion about that? Seems to me, I'm not sure what a reasonable return would be.
Well, I looked at that, because I mean, as you saw, when originally the code enforcement guy was like, we'll deny your application, I'll take care of everything, it'll go to the appeals board. Like, okay, and then he
He's like
gives me
kicking
this,
the
he
can
gives me
down
the
the road.
checklist, and he
Yeah.
says I have to fill out the checklist, and it's 23 pages of material that we had to assemble for this.
Well, that's the nature of the beast.
Yes, and so that first line, a lot of the ordinance is geared towards if I had a lot and I wanted to build a house from scratch. Or a business on that location from scratch.
We've been trained on different examples of
Yes.
whether variances are appropriate or not. And one of the things that I wonder about is, have there been any neighbors commenting on what you're proposing? I mean,
Nothing bad,
Yeah.
and we see,
Most people are like, you haven't rebuilt your deck yet.
but also there's the problem you mentioned, the sea level and the lake level rises. It's going to impact the application of our ordinances for many, many people.
we're,
Well, then, we have people that are just around from us that are having issues with their camps. As you've seen, ours is on rock ledge, way up
Yeah,
above the water line,
Yeah.
vertically. The people around from us, we have at least two of the camps or cottages, summer cottages, that are literally being undermined by the lake. And they've got their own
At
issues, and
times.
they're gonna be looking for relief on how to repair those over
Well,
this next year.
just think about the checklist here. We've done talked about the first one. I could say arguably that it's still, the answer would be no. Or excuse me, it cannot yield a reasonable return unless it's granted. The answer would be no. But the second question, the need for variance is due to unique circumstances of the property. I don't think
Yes.
that's true.
I would probably say yes.
The granting of a variance will not alter the essential character of the locality. That's probably true.
That's true.
And the hardship is not the result of action you've taken. That's true.
That's true.
Um,
On the reasonable return issue, again, if you consider my mother-in-law and my own mom having access to spend time with us at the lake, and they can't, or other handicapped or vertically challenged people who are wheelchair bound, we have no way for these people to come and visit because they can't use the bathroom. They can't go in the building because they can't get upstairs. And so there's that aspect of it, of trying to improve
You're
quality. and
proposing to do the work yourself, conceivably. I mean, you're proposing to do the work yourself. Would there be no
Yes.
way to build access from the garage up?
Because it drops.
Right.
It's really weird. The house itself, the front part of the house by the lake is the peak of the ledge. And it
there's a ledge
drops
right
off.
next door to it
Yeah,
there.
it literally,
Yeah.
the difference between the deck elevation and the actual driveway is probably about 10 feet in elevation.
If I could just orient myself in understanding
Yeah.
the application you submitted with the mostly to scale, I presume, drawing
Yeah.
of the proposed deck.
Yes,
Again, back in the application of what the code officer had. You were proposing the step space, the driveway where the car would be parked nonetheless, and then that was the only step accessing the deck other than facing the water. So I guess I'm just trying to orient and understand if a car drives in and parks in front of the garage, they're still planning by the looks of it to access that front deck in front of the stairs, just the stairs would come out in addition to the width of the deck.
Well, everything I know about drawing, I learned in high school.
Oh, I'm gonna. This is great.
How to draw drawings like this.
They've
when I
all
was in
been
high school
this
shop.
good.
Ultimately, and I'll just point it out, this is, the driveway extends from here and it goes, Hoffses Beach Lane basically ends right here. So the whole access road and everything else, it curves around and it comes, and there's part of it, it branches right here, my garage is right here. This part goes up to the top of the back of the house, it goes uphill, but this is all, this whole part of the driveway is about 2 to 3 feet above lake level. And there's a hill, this is basically, this part of the house, there's a ridge that goes here, it's all rock ledge, pegmatite rock ledge. And it's all uphill, and so right here, there's this, what we listed on the drawing is a gravel path. It basically connects, there's a piece of the driveway that comes up the hill onto that ledge. And so it connects to that, and then you have to walk downhill to get to where the actual driveway is and where most people park.
So the page of photos that Jenny provided today,
So if you look,
picture one to me gives the best sense of that ridge you just talked about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
someone pulls in front of that garage door. I'm just trying to understand and get clarity on what you're proposing, for the sake of the board, because there's still gonna be an incline from the driveway where the car's parked to get to the proposed steps. I wanna confirm whether those were steps you're proposing or a ramp. In terms
Oh,
of
no.
handicap
Yeah,
access.
no, that's not where the handicap access is.
Oh, okay,
No,
sorry.
right here,
Right here,
So look at picture 2.
where picture 2 is.
So picture
Okay.
2, extending, that's
Here.
the deck porch that is in.
Doing all the way around the back of the house?
Yeah,
So,
that's
so
the back.
literally, so just
so
extending.
deck 2 is, if you're looking at the deck, at the map, deck 2 is looking down the backside of the house.
They can drive their car over.
And then you're proposing a ramp off of that, it says gate.
So
Right
that-
now, it says gate because, when I drew this, I wasn't exactly sure the difference in elevation between the deck and the rock at that exact point. It's basically, the difference in elevation is approximately a foot.
Yeah, not much.
And so, and then the rock itself actually gains in elevation,
A little bit.
a little bit before then it drops off
And again,
down the right.
Are you
And so that's
proposing
why
a gravel path along there then?
It's
Well,
already
you got-
essentially a gravel path.
But up to the height of the deck?
Yeah, there, well,
So there
It's
would be no
interesting.
steps?
from when her aunt and uncle lived there, what they did was they built, because there's no railing or anything on that end. They built a concrete step
Yes,
that sits there that has her
My
cousin's
cousin's
name
name.
etched in the top of the
So
concrete
that's
step.
photo, best indicated by photo 2 there on that page that was handed.
Yeah, and so you can see that concrete step, and that's how that concrete step was probably poured in place, and they've been using that to get off the deck.
so this little 4-foot piece is the
That's the-
handicap access.
That's the
The
extension.
little
they make.
4-foot piece would be
Yeah.
the handicap access. So my
Correct.
question for everybody here, because I'm new, on the bottom of the second page of the findings report that Mike sent back, it says notwithstanding the section of the Board of Appeals may grant a variance for the dwelling for the purpose of making it accessible. So would that, yeah, who resides or regularly uses, so that's the question of who regularly uses.
Right.
If that little 4-foot section is part of that.
It'd be interesting.
If we don't talk about the connecting the decks for a second, but just take this, so it becomes a ramp. So you have access to the
I
building.
understand that, and I understand
So
that.
that's what I'm wondering is if that would fall under that section of the ordinance.
I think it could be a hardship as far as to sell a house and didn't have a feasible way to get a handicapped in and out, or an ambulance to come and try to
Right.
get somebody in and out. I think it makes sense to.
That's, I think, part of the application,
Right.
but not the whole.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the problems, one of the training examples that we've had shows the undue hardship test. It says the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return without a variance. And they have a picture of an example, not yours, but similar.
Mhm.
And it says, this slide is designed to illustrate the classic request. The landowner is a principal dwelling and wants one or more setback variances or a lot size variance to build an accessory structure, such as a garage or expand the principal structure, which is sort of what you're proposing, a porch or a deck, or even a second dwelling. Where a principal structure exists, it is virtually impossible to satisfy the undue hardship test. Proposed accessory structures or expansions would generally constitute maximizing the owner's return on the land rather than seeking a reasonable return on the land. The existing use is sufficient to provide the owner with a reasonable return. And so stands or falls that under the way the courts would interpret this, you will admittedly have to have some rental income. And it's maybe not maximizing it, but as a matter of law, you can't satisfy that test. In terms of the undue hardship dimensional variance, you pass some of the tests, but not all of it. And I guess the question is whether we as a Court of Appeals are authorized to not apply the law because we're sympathetic with your desire to make what would be reasonable otherwise improvements. And it seems to me that one of the functions of the code enforcement officer here, rather than necessarily telling us to make revise your plans, is that you should go back and work with him on saying, what are the most important things enabling your mother to have access, or anybody who's handicapped. Yeah, I'm not that young anymore, and I.
Well, neither are we.
Yeah.
We're looking,
Or
we're
to have a
looking at.
And this is the second, this is not the first set of plans that we've sent to him.
Right, I'm almost thinking also, it might have been useful. I mean, are you a contractor generally?
No,
It might be, if you run this by someone who would be a professional, he might look at your situation, knowing our ordinance, and come up with a solution that would not require a variance, but would meet your needs. And I think that's one of the things I'm thinking is important to consider here. But I mean, I'm only speaking based on what I've seen here just now. And I don't know whether,
Does the building have ability to be a year-round dwelling?
It is, yes, it is.
It's-
Well, my aunt and uncle lived there for,
since 72.
well, they weren't there year round then. They turned it year round 1980-ish,
So you
late
have-
seventies.
You had heat.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
So I
Good
believe
heat,
that
water,
it is
that
a
big
year-round
building.
dwelling.
It's a year-round thing. And I'm able to work remotely, so I come up here all the time, and just year for weeks, just working out.
As far as the water situation,
Well-
the rise and the fall. Get used to it,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
because I have lived there on Pemmican Lake for the last almost 60 years.
Okay.
So get used to it. And the people who happen to be in the lower levels, I mean, we've had our road covered that's not
Right.
that close to the
Yeah.
water.
Right, right.
So,
We have that issue too.
so
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
you just have to
yeah,
learn.
that's mud season.
It was
Yeah.
back flooding into the.
But
areas.
because of that dam, that's what they were holding back,
Mhm.
the water. And whenever they would open the water, then it would go
Right.
right down, and we had a huge beach.
Well, I'm sure you remember, there's the, where the high water mark would be at the beginning of the summer and
Oh,
the
yeah.
high water mark at the end of the summer.
Mhm.
It's very different, because
Oh, yeah.
literally I've been going there my whole life, and the difference is huge.
Yeah.
So making a 25-foot from the
Tough to.
high water mark makes more sense when you're talking about tidal,
Right, not,
but not so much for, as much for a lake, just because it does vary, so I certainly understand. But, I don't think we're really asking for a lot to be able to make it not only accessible for my mom, but also when we decide that we're gonna end up there on a more permanent basis.
And just, reorient, as a factual formal piece here, the application submitted indicated. Number 5 for to review it as an undue hardship variance. The other option within state law and indicating on here is a disability variance, which was not checked, though the questions were answered on the following.
Yeah, because I think on the
subsequent pages.
instructions, it says you can only check one box. And I said, well, which one should I check?
Well, yeah, so it's kind of like one application, maybe swinging for both, options to be reviewed under. That's why I had added, that other section there on the disability one. So if you get into that, I mean, just would advise that you kind of go through that same checklist there and see, just clarifying, is the house this in question here, the primary residence for you?
It is not.
Okay,
Not currently.
Not current.
Yeah, but we didn't expect getting this place.
Yeah,
It was like,
wasn't on our bingo card. But we're thrilled that that it is.
yeah, it's been a blast. All of Denver's got, our other current,
Well, I bet you, I mean, I'm one of those.
would be different, very different.
I mean, Wyndham.
Yeah, I'm like, my first house was in Nesper.
Wyndham, okay.
Yeah, we're in.
But yeah, so there's those three design aspects, and like you said, the code enforcement officer felt like he didn't have the sole authority to rule on those things, so height, south end connection. And so here we are.
Did the planning board have the ability to approve rebuilding the decks without changes?
It's not, it doesn't require planning board, so it just comes to the code enforcement, it's in the.
Only because you want to make the changes.
So literally, if we just wanted to replace what's there, we didn't have to do anything.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is to make it better for everybody. And follow the spirit of the regulations along with the way it's supposed to go.
I can understand making wheelchair or access,
Right.
and the only two doors, exterior doors, are from a deck, one deck. Yeah,
See, with respect to the disability variance, which is on variance application page 3. It says that the Board of Appeal may grant a variance to an owner of a single-family dwelling for the purpose of making that dwelling accessible to a person with a disability who resides in or regularly uses the dwelling. The board shall restrict any variance granted under this provision solely to the installation of equipment or the construction of structures necessary for access to or egress from the dwelling by a person with disability. The board may impose conditions on the variance, including limiting the variance to the duration of the disability or the time the person lives with the disability lives in the dwelling. So to some extent, even if you check the disability variance box, unless your mother was living in it regularly or someone with disability was living in it regularly, you wouldn't be eligible for the disability variance.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, her disability occurred before we gained
Purchase this place.
Right, I mean,
ownership of the dwelling, and now she can't.
it's a conundrum.
Or be with us because she can't access.
I guess the question is, if she's living in an assisted living facility, the odds of her moving that permanently would put a burden on you to look at.
Correct, and that is absolutely correct, but, the sad part, yeah, she's the one that brought us every summer to Maine before we ended up moving to Bath, and we have not been able to bring her out because
Appreciate
she
it.
can't get in to even use the facilities, because she can't do that many stairs.
Is the step from the lakeside deck into the sliding glass door there? Achievable when there was a small step
Yeah,
up in there.
That's one of the things that originally I was like, so what does this thing look like? And ultimately by raising that deck 3 inches, it takes away a third or so of that height.
Yeah, and then
In
there
terms of
will
being
just
able to get
be,
in.
because in picture number from the side near the end,
But can she do 2 steps
you can see,
into the house?
She could do one,
yeah, that's about it,
but that's about it.
yeah.
It seems like you might have an opportunity to keep the proposed access from the backside and where you have gate. Potentially build that deck off at an angle such that it's going away from that 25-foot.
Yeah.
Setback issue and create a ramp there, though the deck wouldn't be connected to the other deck. it might provide at least access into the house from that side, still having a ramp even potentially.
Like I said, that's why there's three questions to solve.
Yeah.
Can we do that? And if everyone agreed, that's that resolved. The next question is, can we raise it 3 inches?
Mhm.
Or does it have to be at the same exact elevation that is? And if we say 3 inches is inconsequential, then we solve that issue. And then it takes us to the third question, which is whether a concrete pad can be replaced with the same square footage of deck. And so it might be best to maybe break the decision down into those 3 pieces and see where we're at.
So I think we've went around on this sufficiently to have a sense of where we are. Does that, and I was wondering whether anyone would like to make a motion or a finding. The letter of April 1st from the code enforcement officer says, pursuant to the shoreline ordinance, expansion of any portion of a structure within 25 feet of the normal high water line of a water body, even if the expansion will not increase non-conformity to the water body or wetland setback. Expansion of accessory structures located closer to the normal high water line or tributary cropland edge that is prohibited, even if the expansion will not increase non-conformity with the water body or wetland setback. And the question is, can we waive that prohibition?
I think I pointed out in our appeals letter that he omitted the word generally. It's not prohibited,
If it generally means usually,
usually, and that's why we're here.
I get it.
It usually means that you can make some exceptions.
Right, and the question is whether we have an exception that if someone, I guess the question also in my mind is who would sue to challenge this? Because it's not that.
Well, I think it depends upon how we see it. And what we approve, but I mean, as far as just having a reasonable access into that house, just suppose the ambulance service had to come and get somebody. It would be difficult. It'd be lugging them up and down those pretty, dangerous stairs.
Yeah,
I guess
And I could see extending that piece of deck and creating that entry onto it. I can't see that I could say we could approve the connection of the two decks. Or at least we don't have reasonable conversation to say that that's a hardship.
as proposed to us. The conditions for granting the variance are. Are you suggesting we could grant them permission to do the handicap accessibility, but not the rest of them?
Right.
That would require a revision of your proposal. So I guess, do you want to make that into a motion?
Yeah, I'd make a motion that we could approve an expansion. For the wheelchair accessibility on the other side of the back side. Is that the back side of the building?
Yeah, we'll call
Or
it south side.
Yeah, south side. But not the connection of the two decks.
Because the disability exception applies to the wheelchair accessibility. And the other part is not accepted because it's back to the reasonable rate of return
Right.
is not met. It can yield a reasonable rate of return, but not even if it's not the optimal. And I guess that means to some extent that we were recommending we go back to the drawing board and focus on the disability ramp access. But we can't approve the variance for the combining of the decks.
What about the increase in height so that they at least match?
Well,
So
that-
3-inch
that-
change.
that-
Which one's gonna which one's gonna get raised out?
The front, the one that's on the lakeside.
On side of,
Which will bring it up level to that slide-in door?
It won't bring it. to
It'll be a
like-
short step instead of a step.
Right now, it's like 9 inches instead of 6 inches.
But so it'd bring it up, so.
Yes,
close.
yes.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
Does that need
What do you say,
further
Rick?
motion?
I don't see a problem with them raising that deck to the height of 3 inches.
But not combining the decks.
But not combining the deck. It just makes it a shorter step to go through those sliding doors. So if you've got access for, you know, for any reason, emergency, it just makes it a safer entrance. But I think it would mess up your set of steps coming up from the lake.
Yeah, we have to.
they're pretty variable to start with.
Are they
Yeah,
weathered?
that,
The interesting is that, you know, we were looking at it today is that those concrete steps are made out of block, but they're actually on a concrete slab
Yeah.
that extends towards the lake.
Yeah.
So, and that concrete slab is actually wider than the
the steps.
concrete blocks.
Yeah.
By a couple of inches, so we should be able to take the concrete blocks out and put a set of stairs right over the top of that with no significant issue.
Yeah.
And it should fit within the existing footprint of those stairs,
Yeah, that's not gonna change.
just because they're weird shaped and wide.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's-
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting how that was originally cobbled together.
Okay.
Can I be a damper?
Yes.
I think you need
You want
to
to-
have a second to the motion before you do too much more discussion.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
And do you need to amend it to include the 3 inches as a variance? That's okay?
You need to amend.
Yeah.
You need to,
Oh, you did, okay.
yeah, but Fred, you amended that?
Yeah, I amend that to the.
Okay.
I can read it back.
So basically,
Yeah,
you're
read
granting
that,
a
please.
variance based on disability, but not on,
Right.
not
Not
on.
on the reasonable.
Is there a problem? Because that was not the application.
I'm just trying to think through in my mind whether there's the need for any NERPA permitting or not, just when you start going in front of that deck. And you start talking about maybe removing concrete slab pieces and disturbing earth, that's where I'm kind of curious if that ends up requiring, if I could finish.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was gonna try to clarify that it was concrete blocks, it's not actual just concrete. The very bottom is a slab, but the other are just the cement blocks. And I can show you better in the picture if you want to see it.
Just block the new stairs on those slab.
So it might still require, I mean, so you have to come back still, I mean, with the variance. As you've worded it now, still to go back to the code officer to get the actual building permit, which he can clarify whether it's a NERPA PBR type permit or not. Typically, any activity that disturbs any ground, and I don't know how the deck will be constructed, if there's gonna be new footings put in the ground or anything like that, but any excavation within a shoreline zone will require, typically, in the best case scenario, it's a quick PBR, nothing major.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure that that's not. The decision here today,
Yeah, he
I
was-
may or may not automatically just assume green light, go ahead.
No, he seemed to indicate that we, you know, because the other deck is still being expanded in size and stuff, we still have to pay for a building permit, and he seemed to be ready to just do that as a regular building permit, but again, I've been surprised on this project since February, so I don't.
Well, it's just its proximity to the water is makes it
Yes.
hyper.
And the thing is, you know, again, almost everything that's underneath that part of the building and the deck is ledge.
Mhm.
It's all exposed rock, so there's not necessarily any real excavation going on as much as there is bolting things to the bedrock.
Okay. We'll do it. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? No. Shall we take a vote on the motion?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Nay, no. Or to nothing. Abstentions. I wish we could have been more helpful, but I think we have to operate within the framework of the rules.
It's a start. It's for us. We'll be able to make it
Yeah, I mean, it's,
better.
We recently sold a cottage that my grandparents bought in 1946. And I've been coming to every year since then, so I know what it means a lot to be able to maintain.
Yep.
But not.
all right,
Well, thank you very much. We certainly appreciated it.
awesome. And so that the code enforcement guy get this resolution, and then I can, what I'll do is I'll just revise this drawing and take out that part of it.
Much, yeah.
And give him, we'll keep that aspect of on there and we'll. use that.
Possibly,
Perfect.
we'll need to meet at some point just to sign the minutes of this meeting. And make sure we know what we're talking about. But I mean, and whatever we come up with, you'll need that access to. So you can so the CEO knows what we decided.
Yeah, because we have to, my son is gonna be coming home to help build in June, so we're trying to make sure that we can get this over to Hancock and get the parts ordered and everything else so that it's ready, so that we can do this in June. Be done with it.
Do we have any other agenda items? I have a motion to adjourn. I make a motion to
I
adjourn.
second.
Thank
Good luck,
So where on Penfield are you?
like yours.
Oh, okay. So you're just beyond that. Just hold it third.